Maybe I'll stop. I'll stop touching my computer. So hands off.
Just hands off, dude. Oh yeah, okay. So I can see the lag right now. I'm still scrolling up on screen.
There we go.
We back?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to create a service. We're going to create a Mongo database that we're going to connect to this backend so we can actually store some data.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say auto service create. Now I can do this all from the single command line using a series of arguments and things like that. So that's possible if you want to script things, if you want automation. We've seen how awful I am at remembering syntax. So we're going to use this as an opportunity to display the interactive mode.
Ah.
Yeah, I kind of turned that one around. It's not me not knowing how to type or remembering anything. It's I want to show you this. So we want a database, and we want the Mongo. It's not happy running in Tmux though.
So this is like picking up things that are a part of the service catalog that you have to enable now on OpenShift for, which you did with some special Ansible. I posted the way to do that in the chat, but this is using that service catalog stuff, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I thought it's funny because I thought you were asking me a question, but then no, you actually answered yourself too. Yeah, so directly in our documentation. So again, not black magic. The Ansible script isn't even terribly interesting. It's just simply for automation purposes. So we'll do, we have that list of services. We'll say audio service create. It's going to ask us what type of service we want to create. And then we're going to start typing in Mongo. And it's just going to filter things out, which looks a little bit better when I'm not in a Tmux session and when the font is not set to absurd. Mm-hmm. But I've landed on ephemeral. It's going to give me some explanation here. Here's where I can set a variety of settings. So database service name, so what it's going to appear as inside of OpenShift, some defaults on memory, Mongo database, we'll just leave all these as the defaults, but you can change these things as necessary. So name the service, just call it DB. Output, this is a very cool line though. So output the non-interactive version of the selected component. So all of the stuff that we just typed in, if I say yes here at the end, it's going to give me the odo service create command with all of the proper flags. So this is a way of using the interactive mode to step through them, but then it's going to give me the command if I wanted this for something like automation or something like scripting. I'll show you just for shits and giggles. This is kind of cool. I'm going to say yes, wait for it to be ready.
If you picked no, it would just run it for you though, right?
It would still run it. Yeah, you'll notice I don't have to go back and rerun that command. It still runs it. It's just going to give me the.
It just outputs it at the end. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's actually a really super handy feature. In fact, no, this is totally unrelated. But yeah, it's actually very cool. And I'd skipped over it so many times as I was playing with it and never bothered to read that option. And once I did, I was like, this is exactly the kind of thing I wanted, because we'll see that command. It just gets long. I mean, anything where you're specifying a lot of configuration in a single CLI command, like, it gets out of control.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm thinking as Jason, the developer advocate who's creating ODO tutorials, like that is exactly what you want, right?
Right, exactly. If I want to be able to, now it's funny because in the workshop, we actually guide people through the interactive mode, but you're right. If I wanted an automated workshop where I'm like, just click this button, get your Mongo deployed, and then while it's deploying, go read over my description of what each of these parameters does. So I pulled up on the bottom again, the OC get pods. Again, to completely reiterate, I don't need to do that. I can trust in this ODO command to tell me when the service comes up and go off of that. But I'm doing it for purposes that we can see. I'm pointing. Can you guys see my cursor?
We do.
Okay, cool. So you can see that there was the deploy container stood up, and then we have our Mongo container running. Now at the top here, it ended saying our database service is ready to go. That's awesome. We can link it to our component, and I'll talk about linking in a second. And then here's the full-blown command for everything we just configured. So our service name, the memory, and so on and so forth. As you can imagine, for a MySQL database, I would specify username and password and that kind of junk here too. But if I needed to recreate this, copy and paste this line, and it should do everything for me. So let's kill that. And we'll list all of our services. Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. This is debating. We want to take a break. Concession. Well, all right, we'll take a break in a second, and then I'll come back and explain what just happened there. Service list. Okay, so we do our service list. We see we have our Mongo database.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we just do our component list, and we see we have our backend. Also note, I had typed in that name DB as, again, this friendly name for Odo. So that way when I want to link the two, right now I want to say, I want to link the backend, and I'm in that directory, so it's going to take that context. I don't have to re-specify that. I want to link the database to it. And that's going to tell me I've successfully updated it. And give me, again, 1 second as I pull up the bottom. You'll notice the backend container is terminating. It's got to restart the container because it's a config change. In OpenShift, any configuration change, environment variables is the biggest one that surprises people. It's going to restart your container. It doesn't inject the new environment variables. It's going to bounce it with the new setup. What linking does is injects environment variables into the component you linked to, which was implied in this command. I'm saying Odo link database into the backend. So it's taking certain environment variables that the database container defined, and it's injecting them into the backend component, which is going to cause it to get restarted. Now, if we were to SSH into it, we would see environment variables floating around. So if we run that same curl command from above, okay, you can see my voice go up because I got a little bit scared there for a second. It's now showing us connected is true, and it's actually giving us the correct Mongo database name. We left it sample that Odo populated. So now we've shown that we deployed our backend, we deployed our MySQL service, Mongo service, and then we said link. And the link has injected certain environment variables in that, admittedly, my code had to know to look for. It's the magic part. We tend to gloss over that magic part in things like workshops. We're like, link into DA, it works. There is a little bit to it. If we look up, it's telling us these were the names of the variables that it's going to inject in. So if I were to pull up my Java code, you'll see it's going to say, hey, is there a URI environment variable? If there is, I'm going to use that to attempt to find the database. And it does some manipulation of those as necessary. For Mongo, it's not particularly needed. But for MySQL, I've had to kind of dork around with URI to be able to put the login information in. So linking takes some environment variables from one component and then makes them accessible into another. If your code knows to look for those, that's where this magic comes in, that I run this link and all of a sudden my backend can connect to the database.
So like your code's like looking for, the database to be at like what, mongo.apps.cluster. Or service.local or whatever.
Not even actually.
Or not even.
No.
So it's easier than that then.
It is. It's looking at, actually right here, this is perfect. Let me go up a tiny bit. This is the best one to look at here. That constant right there is simply the letters URI, which we saw in the previous thing, that's the name of the environment variable that Mongo injects into the backend to say, hey, we're linked, use this to connect to me. I do some munging here because it's going to look like this and we want to shove in a username and password, but for all intents and purposes, it's giving me all the data I need to connect to it. So if I find this environment variable, my code assumes, hey, I'm going to have these other environment variables and I'm going to munge them as necessary and use that as my Mongo credentials. If not, my code simply says hard code to localhost just for simple dumb testing purposes. I mean, this is not a production level application, so not the best way of handling it. But yeah, so that's the piece that we never do a good job of explaining, because a lot of our more businessy, salesy things for Odo were just like deploy your backend, deploy your database, link them, everything works. To developers, you take one look at that and you're like, bullshit. Like there's something there I'm not seeing. And that always kind of annoys me. So I've been trying to change a lot of our messaging, especially to developers, of you want to see behind the curtain. The curtain's cool. That was a very neat demo that I ran link and all of a sudden connective's true, but that doesn't show me how it's actually going to be useful. So your code ends up looking for some environment variables. And then if it finds those, you understand you've been linked and you can extract what you need from that to connect to the database. Okay. That actually seems like a good spot for a quick break since we're at about 10 after and my voice is going a bit hoarse. JJ, I'm going to stop sharing so you can throw up our cool be right back. And you guys just want to take a couple minutes to grab some more water?
Sounds reasonable.
Okay, we'll be right back, guys.
Thanks, everybody. And we're back. There we go. Sorry about that, everybody. Go ahead, Jay.
Okay. Try that again. Okay. It's funny. You commented before about the JJ and the J thing. One of my closest, oldest friends now, since high school, his name is JJ, and it's even worse because we look like brothers. Repeatedly when we're together, people always think we're brothers, and then the whole J, and his sister calls him Jay, and I'm like, no, he doesn't get to abbreviate to that. He's got to use both of them. That's just pissing me off.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah. All right, so where do we stand? I've gone a very long way around what is ultimately maybe 5 commands in total. We've taken a Java app, we've created an Odo component for it, we created a URL, and then we push that out. And after we push it, that's running on top of OpenShift. We created a service, which in our case was a Mongo database. We pushed that out as well. And then we said, I want to link that database to the backend. And what that does is inject some information about the database directly into the backend pod as an environment variable. My code is brilliant and knows to look for those environment variables. And if it finds them, it's going to use them and then automatically link things up.
Jay,
so we ran,
real quick. Do you have those, or all the commands, in a gist that if somebody's just jumping on, they could see it? Or do you have a place that we can reference in case somebody has to leave or something like that?
I will in about a week.
Okay.
I'm working on the Red Hat developer site, developers.redhat.com, has cheat sheets. I don't know why I will say cheerleaders. Cheat sheets. A whole section of cheat sheets, and I'm writing one for Odo. It's almost finished, and then I've got to submit it to them. So I love having a legitimate answer that's not just, hey, that's a good idea. It's super close. I almost could RTFE you on that. But it's super close on it because of exactly that kind of need. I love those kind of things too. When I found that on the developer site, it was 5 of them I immediately downloaded it. And just there was a kube one, there was a basic Linux one. I was like, what kind of weird, obscure shit am I going to find in the Linux one? And sure enough, there was some of that. So yes, soon. And then, in fact, I'll actually tweet that out. So that way we make sure that gets propagated out.
Perfect.
Okay, so our back end's done. Cool. Let's head to our front end. Front end, if you look here, you'll see.
Share your screen. Share your screen.
Shit. Of course.
That's why you keep me around.
Yay! All right. Let's wait to see. Okay. All right, cool. Now I'm in the front end. Why is there a git? Oh, cool. Give me a second because I have been running, I guess, some sort of demo. Let's reset that. All right, very good. I lied. I want to go back one.
All right.
There's Java. So something to know in terms of details, and this may be a little more details than people need to know, but you'll notice in here in the back end, there's this .odo directory. When I first created the component, Odo dropped this directory into my project. And if we go in there, it's not worth really digging into config, but if we do open it up, you'll see a lot of the things that we've set in here. So it's a Java-based component. It's named concessions. It's deployed to a project named Twitch. Here's our, the jar file is concessions. The name of it is backend. We're creating a URL. What that gives us is if I check this into source control, when someone else pulls the repo out, they can literally just type odo push. All of this information will be contained in this directory, and everything that we've just configured will get pushed out. So it's a way of sharing your Odo configurations and simplifying it even further. So I'm a brand new developer on the project. I want to get up and running it. I'm just going to type Odo push off of the checkout, and boom, I'm good to go. And it's really cool from a process standpoint that I don't have to think or recreate any of this stuff. I know I've just got the same consistent setup that everyone has.
So definitely do not add that to your git ignore file, right?
Typically, no. It is in this one because it's a demo. Is it? Yeah, because it's a demo for Odo. I didn't want it accidentally landing in there and then screwing people up. But you're absolutely right. You would not normally want to do that. And if I go up to code, okay. if I do an Odo list from here, Odo's going to get confused. It's going to say, hey, I don't know what application or project you're talking about. Back where I was, though, it's fine. If I run it from the back end, it understands how to pull that. The Odo directory also provides context for which Odo project you're in. So again, there's no real Odo concept on the server. It loosely exists through labels and stuff, but a lot of this information, Java and things like that, comes from this .odo file. Where was I going with this? Oh, so it needs that context information. So when I'm saying Odo list, it's looking in the .odo directory, seeing the app name is app, seeing the project name is Twitch, and it's using that to complete that list for us. So if we go out to my home directory, again, Odo list does nothing. I can say app is app and project is Twitch, and it's going to give us the same information. I could have also said context is code.
By the way, this is really bad. I'm sorry about that. If you didn't notice, the little new follower just thing popped up, and I want to say, RH developers, thank you so much for the follow. Hopefully you'll learn some stuff. I'm assuming that could be Red Hat developers question.
I hope if we missed that one and somebody else took it, then that's really bad.
Agree.
And we need to figure that out real soon. Or I could say for the context, look in this directory, look in the .odo directory and figure out the context from there. So I point that out because it screwed me up in the beginning. I would be in the wrong directory. I do an Odo list. And it's like nothing exists. Okay, so we're going to go to the front end. Same thing, Odo create. This is a Node.js application. So again, if we look in here, we'll see package.json and some other stuff going on here. Odo create Node.js, and we're going to name it front end. Again, we see just this very simple validating component. That's all it does is basically checking my syntax. Nothing is pushed out to the server. We'll do we'll create a URL as well. We'll do an Odo push here. So while this starts, we'll hop back down here. We'll look at the pods. I keep typing that D needlessly. We'll do the poo. You can see it's kicking off this deploy, and it's kicking off, as has this pending. Now, notice we didn't do the Maven compile. Now, obviously, it doesn't make sense because this is our Java project, but we didn't have any kind of local packaging step. What's happening is the source code is getting directly uploaded into that Node.js component image. That's what's called a base image a builder image in our source to image functionality. This is another thing that OpenShift provides in terms of making your developer experience better, building on top of just that base Kubernetes and container experience, where I effectively tell OpenShift, here's my builder image, here's some source code, make me an image. So there's no Docker file in my front end directory. I'm going to need it down here.
And you didn't specify, or maybe I missed it, like source code repository or any of that stuff, right?
No, so I could have. It assumes the current directory. If I don't explicitly tell it someplace, there is an option for git string, where I could have told it, I want you to go out to Git and pull down this repository and then send the source code in. So I could have skipped the checkout step. There's probably a use case somewhere, but chances are if I'm doing this, I want to be able to dork with the code, so I'm going to want it locally. But
yeah, exactly.
That's absolutely possible. That nice, simple syntax here, it works for the basic use case. I have code. I want you to run my code and then be able to mess with my code. So I need to create it. It's Node.js. I didn't even need front end. I could have started with just that, but I wanted to be able to have it say this nice name for it when I do an Odo list. So purely for readability sake.
Humor me real fast. Go up one directory, and then do that list again.
So again, no context in here. This doesn't have the .odo directory.
Got it. Because if you saw that list is inside of, there we go. The front end source was ./ compared to target, but because it's contextualized to the .odo directory, wow, that's going to be a problem.
Believe me. You're not wrong. This is not an absolute file path. I'm currently in the backend directory, and it's saying my front end code is in dot, which is not the case. I mean, even this in general, this is not a valid file URL on my system because I don't have a directory and root called target. It's enough where, and I think just like you said, it's going to be relative. So it just stores it as a relative URL. Now I defined it that way because I simply said binary target / concessions. I'm curious if I had given it, the full path, what would have happened? It may have stored it in there, but
that state pushed, where does that come from?
Let's see. It might be in.
I'm thinking just, side conversation talking about the path, if you're checking the ODO directory into version control, you probably still want a relative because people put that wherever they want, right? So what you have is probably a better way to do it.
I think you're absolutely right. The push might be from this file list. I'm sorry, the push, might be from this file list, which is storing this inventory of everything that it's pushed up. So it knows how to just do a diff, which we're going to see in like 5 minutes.
Cool.
We can actually test that theory in a second. Okay. So source to image, back to that. It pushed all of the source code up. Now, these specialized builder images are, I say specialized, they're not that special. They are images with some base utilities for the language installed on it, so NPM. And then there's a couple of scripts on there that know how to download a Git repository if it's given URL, or it knows how to run NPM and then the proper packaging steps from there. I'm more of a Python guy, so the Python one will understand I have to install the requirements, and then I have to do a Python setup, a pip setup, and so on and so forth. Pip install, Jesus. So those builder images are something that come with OpenShift, not just Odo. Odo utilizes them, but your out-of-the-box OpenShift experience does have that. Okay, so we do an Odo URL list, and we're seeing in our front-end directory, we do have this front-end URL. If I hop over, y'all see my browser right now? Okay. So type in just our dumb little kiosk order, and I believe this is going to give us a 500 error. Because there's no backend connected to it. I probably should clean that up. This is not my application. I kind of inherited it and just haven't fixed that part. But let's say we intentionally left that in there, and oh, look, there's an error in our application. What do? We go back to our Odo log, and it's giving us, again, the logs of the pod itself. So for our purposes, from the Odo standpoint, the logs for the component, and we're seeing here that we're getting a 404 when we try to submit to this ticket number REST API, which is the backend provides it, but we haven't told it where to get to the backend. So right now the front end knows it's out there. There's a backend somewhere. It has no idea how to reach it. So how do we do that? Well, we link it. Same process for our service. I'm going to say
denied. Oh, what?
I'm gonna. Man, if this was like a formal presentation, I would totally spin that and be like, and then we see Odo is smart enough to tell us I need some more information. And you can tell I've been doing this bullshit racket for a while, but that flows. I try to tell my students. I was telling you guys last week. I teach at Villanova University, and we do. In the fall, I teach senior projects. So I have them run this mini Scrum process where every 3 weeks they have to demo their progress, because if I say, I'll see you at the end of the semester, they'll do it in the last 72 hours and it's crap. But I'm also giving them this experience of a sprint review and presenting in front of people. And I'm always trying to explain to them, I was like, you need to get a way of reacting gracefully to failure. I was like, because, shit's always going to go wrong. And they're still nervous. They're college kids. So they'll get up there and something will crash and that'll happen. And they immediately sweat buckets coming down and they're beet red. And I'm like, this is great, run with it. I'm like, it's not affecting your grade. I'm like, just find a way to just bounce through this. Because until you're in that pressure situation, like I was teaching that course and then I went to present at reInvent, one of my biggest audiences ever. It was like 400 people, and literally got to this application not available page. And I had seen it maybe one time out of every 20 that I ran it. And this was back on OpenShift 3. It was a timing issue. It was running on my machine, so that wasn't helping things. It was a timing issue of when DNS got updated. So I had a video recording backup, but I didn't want to use that. And I froze for like half a second. I'm like, all right, let's play with this. So I was like, here's what you would be seeing. And I was like, I'm trying to vamp until it caught up and the DNS got fixed. I hit refresh and it came up, and I was still rattled the rest of the talk. But I went back to my students and I was like, I was just telling you guys they had failed gracefully. And I was up there, pissed my pants in front of 400 people. I was like, so I'm not good at it. Don't get me wrong.
Nice.
All right. This all goes back to linking to the back end. We specify the port, and it's giving us a very similar output saying, hey, from the back end, we've deduced these environment variables make sense to inject into the front end. In fact, let's do it this way. ODO log-f on the front end. Oh, we started already. That was too quick. You'll see we have a second deployment for it. We didn't even get a chance to see the terminating one. It went too fast. But it restarted the container because there were environment variable configuration changes, so we bounced the container. All right, let's go back. So we have our kiosk menu. I want a burger this time. I'm going to say screw the salad. We're going to place the order.
I mean, aren't you on quarantine? You're only ordering food for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even get a soda.
You know, I almost did the soda thing. And speaking of quarantine, like you'd think I would actually eat healthier since it's all clean and at home, but no, my diet has gone out the friggin' window. Like we're ordering tonight and tomorrow, and we're justifying it. Like we want to keep the small pizzerias in business, so we're going to order for them. It's just us not wanting to cook, and the kids are like, "Yay, pizza!" So we don't have to deal with that headache. And they're pissed at me right now because I kicked them off the internet while I was sharing because my outbound is crap on my home network. So I was like, I have to screen share everybody off the internet. Sounds like everybody hates me right now.
Yeah, speaking of that, I definitely have similar problems here. Like my advertised speeds and stuff are definitely nowhere near what they're supposed to be. So many people streaming. Oh, yeah. But hey, whatever, it is what it is.
My upload's always been crap on this service, which is fine. I mean, like I said, I can make do. I just have everyone. And then I went down for the break and I was like, guys, I'm talking really long, so this could take like another hour. Which I'm just prolonging with this tangent. We get to a thank you page. It's no longer an error. This thank you page is effectively coming out of the database. What's happening is that order number is getting incremented each time we snap it to the database. We'll do another one. We'll add some sodas this time. We get up to 102. I could dork. I don't know that it's necessarily worth going into the database to show you guys, but other things going on. As I hit that, you'll see the logs. We have the tail on. So in addition to the initial listing, it's showing us all the different calls it was making. If I went into the back end, I could show you the logs there. Now, one more thing I want to show you. That's cool. I got an application running. But I started this an hour and a half ago with my super long-winded way of saying this facilitates your developer inner loop. Like, all right, I've got everything set up. I want to be able to write something. So I'm going to change some code in the back end, in the front end. That's just going to be simpler because I'm not compiling. Before I do that, I'm going to set up an Odo watch. And you'll see, I like the output. I feel like the CLI output messages, I'm a big fan of Odo, and I wasn't a couple months ago. When I was on the bleeding edge ones and it was still not quite baked. But so I'm a huge fan of it from a workflow perspective and everything like that. But I also really dig the CLI is fairly intuitive into what it tells you. It's like, we're waiting for something to change in this directory. It's pretty much exactly what you would think it's doing. Same thing with the link output, how it's saying like, hey, these environmental variables were added. Like that's pretty obvious. Okay. I gotta remember where I changed this though. Public? Nope. Use. Yes. So we'll go into the index and we will change this to say by Odo. And in fact, I forgot to fix this. You'll notice it's already spazzing out on the bottom. I can configure Odo to ignore certain files, like for instance, the vim swap file, but it's doing its job. Odo watch detected that there were new files added to that directory, in this case, the vim swap file. So it was like, hey, my job is to keep this in sync with the cluster. I'm going to send it up there. So right now, my stupid swap file is sitting up there, which is annoying, but at the same time, kind of a cool example of it's doing its job. And there's ways to manipulate that. I think Odo should honor, there's an .odo ignore, which functions like git ignore. And I believe it's supposed to fall back and use .git ignore in the case it doesn't find a .odo ignore. I don't think I've set any of this up for that because who thinks to ignore .swap files? But
Okay, hang on.
Yeah, it does follow the get ignore as well. So yeah, if you did that in there, you should be okay.
Should, yeah.
Right?
For production,
What's up, JJ?
this
Yeah.
feels a little aggressive.
I never once said the word production. This is
Okay.
developer interlude. Yeah,
Got
yeah,
it.
yeah. No. ODO, I mean, I probably should know what the stupid term stands for, but the D, I'm pretty sure, is developer. And if it's not, it's intended for developer use. This is very much developer tooling.
Okay.
Yeah, you would not want to do this in production. But again, I'm focusing on this developer interlude. I have this all set up. Now I'm adding a new feature. I'm adding another type of food, or I'm changing a title or something like that. And I want to skip the save this, build an image, push an image to the registry, rebuild my container. All of that is this pain in the ass we're trying to ignore. So I changed the title. Yeah.
So the
Did you have something?
OpenShift developer ostrich. No?
Hey, works for me. No, honestly, I take it back. I do know it's called. It stands for OpenShift Do. Is actually what it does stand for.
Oh.
The D is not for developer, but it's the entire tool is scoped around developers. All joking aside about the naming, it is absolutely not something you would want to be doing in production.
Got it.
So I'll save that.
Back to the OpenShift mantra, right? Making it easy for developers and administrators and people working on Kubernetes to work on Kubernetes easier.
This
right?
callback works a lot better if it didn't take me an hour and 40 minutes to get to the actual callback.
To your point, though, it's only 5 or 6 commands. Because you walk through each one of them, I feel confident not never seeing anything to do without it before now. And I'm like, I have some opportunities to play with this now, just to kind of get that OODA loop, because what it is, it's you're basically creating an OODA loop for developers, which is pretty sexy, man.
This is the way.
So
exactly.
Is my video spazzing out, or was it just like my Twitch?
It did for a second.
Okay. So we updated the index. We didn't get to see the cool timing of it. That went relatively fast down here. We see milliseconds, couple seconds. And I go back over and I hit refresh, and we now have the new title, Concession Kiosk by Odo. Yeah, and again, if you're not talking over it and you're like me and you make sloppy changes and you're just like, shit, I got to try that again. Go in there and write an exclamation point, because that's always fun. We give it a couple seconds. Again, we get obnoxious and just start jamming on the refresh. I might have mistyped something here. Is it not like an exclamation point?
I think it's just still syncing, so
it
might take a second.
Yeah, there we go. I caught it in the middle. I went a little bit too fast.
Yeah, you refreshed as that file was being rewritten.
Yeah. I tried to show off a little bit. I should. This is why I need to talk over things. And yeah, and we see that. So, arbitrary-ish example aside, you got to realize the usefulness of this is that watch. Now, if I didn't have the watch running, it's simply a push. So I'll just close that out just to show that by example. We'll do Shift Do, and why not? I run that same with the views directory, which is why that happened. I could have gone up, but I had this one down here. So I just say push again, and you'll notice it's an idempotent operation. So it's again looking at that .odo directory to say, hey, I expect there to be a URL there. Cool, it's there. Everything's good. Pushes the latest out, and now we have the teenage girl teenage daughter, I should say, texting convention of multiple exclamation points. Every text I get from her, like the last letter, like bye, like 1,000 E's. So yeah, and then that's where it gets super useful, right? So being able to just have this thing set up doesn't require anything extra on the cluster. So if I have my company gave me access to a cluster, I don't have any kind of crazy admin access where I can install extra things. Purely a client-side tool, uses all of the built-in constructs already in there. Once you've got it set up, and I'm not really overblowing the explanation behind it, or even better, your project already includes a .odo directory. You start with that push to get things out there, and then you code away and you push up whenever you want. On top of that, shift, right? I probably should know it better. And then, or you set up your watch and then you just type and you watch it dynamically refresh. And that's really, really badass. If you spend any time working with something and having to do the builds and do the pushes into the registry and deal with that, this feels so much more intuitive. Everything I did in this top command was all Odo-based commands. I didn't need anything in the OC. And that's not to say I wouldn't want to, as a developer, learn it. Like, I'm not trying to preach this as this, oh, I don't have to learn anything about containers or OpenShift, but it does hide away a lot of it and use language I'm much more comfortable with in terms of saying, I want a component, I want a service, I want a route, or on a URL, push it out there. I'm using git push as it is. Odo push just feels natural to me as a developer. So this has been going on for a while. I definitely want to make sure we have time to shift gears, but no, I saw that you wrote shit. You're not getting away from that. So, like I said, overblown explanation to it, but ultimately it's really cool. I'm not trying to just like hype up Red Hat products. Once I started playing with it and really started using it for like just in development purposes, like this entire, so when I got handed this demo application as an example, we had a backend in Node, a front end in Node, and I wanted a binary example. So I rewrote it in Java, or ported it to Java, I should say. And I did that 100% using this Odo process, or the Odo way, which is becoming a term just within my team. Don't think it's a real thing. It was really cool. And I'm actually super excited about it, which is why I was so quick to jump up and be like, hey, by the way, I could talk about this today. And then this create shell script, this was just me outputting that non-interactive command from before. I had run it previously and just saved it for various reasons, with changing a few things here and there, but nothing spectacular. So I think that's the majority of what I wanted to show about this. Any questions, you guys? Anything you want me to try and see if I break, or do we take a little breather and then go on to the code-ready container stuff?
I think first off, I kind of, want to think about, hey, if somebody joined as we're going or whatever, like, how do they get Odeo? Where do they find it? What do they have to do to get it up and working? Because, this is an awesome way to, obviously develop applications. If you're using OpenShift, it makes it really simple. You just use that watch command and you automatically have things in sync. Like, it's pretty awesome. So what do I have to do, assuming I don't know anything other than I got OpenShift and I need to make a Java app?
Yeah, I like that. Someone else handed me a cluster that I'm going to end up using. I think you linked to the specific download.
It's got to be on GitHub.
Yeah, and like you can see, obviously, I pulled up here off of the searching. There is the GitHub version here.
I linked to the developer.redhat site, which is in the chat.
Okay, so is this the one that's gonna? Yeah, one of these has a link to install, and I'm taking too long to get there. So, so. Follow GitHub. Yeah, you literally Google it. It's ultimately going to filter me through to GitHub, which I'm sure JJ. I'm not looking at the video because I know he's got the shit-eating grin, being like, "I told you." I'm assuming we go under releases over here, and ta-da, we can download it. It is written in Go, which means
runs everywhere.
And it also means there's actually nothing to do.
So you just download that executable, and you have it.
And I have that there. Yeah, so 1.1.1 is the current one. And I can show you proof that that's the one I'm actually using. I saved that because I'm just obnoxious like that. I'm like, what if I ever need this again? Never going to need it again.
I assume you need the OC command too, right?
Let's see.
Or maybe you have had to like log in at some point already. I don't know.
There is
kube
login
config.
is provided. Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah, you need your kube config file set maybe
Yeah.
if you don't need the OC command, but hey, it looks like that worked.
I mean, our super scientific approach of running a
Yeah.
single command to list projects.
Basic test.
Basic test. I mean, clearly, ship it. It's done. It's full compatibility to those things.
Exactly.
This is such a developer channel. I love how everyone just goes to that. Yeah, so that's a good question. The installation instructions, to give a real answer to this, will actually cover it had I not glossed over that. So it's going to talk about, look at that, links to the official documentation for installing Odo. The important takeaways that Brian is getting at there is you're going to want to download just the client, and then that's literally it. We were alluding to the fact that it's going to use your kube config to figure out your login credentials and the context and all that other fancy stuff. There's nothing required on the server. You just get this tool and you start poking around and using it once you've logged into a cluster. And like I said, I'm almost positive there's a login in here as well.
Yeah, I saw login right there, utility command, or it was on the other scroll up.
Login,
Yeah,
there we
there
go.
it is.
Yeah, so we could do the login through there. I had just copy and pasted my OC login command from the dashboard of my OpenShift console. So that's how you get it. You find the download link, literally Google it or check our chat. I also should probably start tweeting about that just to make it more obnoxious. You download the executable. It's just like kubectl, where you download just a simple Go file and that's it, and then put it somewhere in your path. And then it's going to use its own client, as we've seen. In fact, let me move that back because I know I'm going to try to run OC and I'm going to be like, it's not there, and I'm never going to remember that we did that. And then you start using it, and all of it is either going to be stored in all of it is going to be stored in the directory of the project you use. All of the metadata around it, just like your Git repository information is stored in your source code under a hidden directory. Same thing for Odo. It's going to be stored under a different directory. Mm-hmm. Something else to reiterate, if you showed up late, this currently does only run against OpenShift clusters, not Kubernetes yet. That support is absolutely on the roadmap. I can't wait for it because I feel like that's just going to open up a ton more doors of saying, hey, you have Minikube, grab Odo and run through this developer tooling on top of it and this new workflow. And I'm super excited for that stuff to get flushed out. Obviously, all the runtimes as well, those are getting worked on. Component, now catalog. Obviously, all of these are going to continue to be iterated upon, added to.
What's modern web app?
That is a great question. I think our better bet for that is going to be OpenShift S2I.
That feels opinionated.
So super opinionated. It would be. It's very likely one of our source to image builder images. Oh wait, actually, you know what? This could be cool. Describe.
Jay, you can play if it's okay. Let's dig into it.
Okay. Describe. Oh no, you can only describe services. All right. How could we deploy one of these just to poke around? And
can we just spin up the container and then exec into it?
The problem is, if it's a builder, it's going to attempt to build something. And I'm wondering what.
Check out what's the templates that are in, what is it, OpenShift -templates or just OpenShift, or I can't ever remember exactly where they're at either. But
I can't either. All right, this is going to be fun.
I have my COBOL build that we could add to S2I. Just saying.
Yeah, Dude, if you showed up next week and you're like, hey, Jay, I want to show you something. I'm going to use Odo to build a COBOL app. I would actually love it. That would be so baller.
Technically,
And it's
that'd be
totally doable. It's
possible,
in my
right?
cheat sheet. It's totally possible. If you build a builder image, which is not hard, you just need a Docker image and then some quick assemble scripts for whatever you have to do in COBOL. Sacrifice a goat. I don't even know how you run COBOL anymore. And then it's in my cheat sheet that'll be published where you just put a tag on the builder image to have it show up in that catalog. And then boom, you get your COBOL and we get our Odo, and I die a little bit inside, but that's okay.
That's the money.
Extend.
The money's there. Just saying.
Do you remember how to list the templates? Can I just do the UI maybe? I don't remember. I haven't played with this that much in. Let's try this maybe. Oh, here we go. Let's try from get modern web app. Build and run modern web applications on Rails
There you
7.
go. It's
Here we go.
React. It's a React app.
Why can't we just call it React app? But also cool. And
Sample repo.
yeah, that's what I want to pull up. Node Shift. I've never even heard of that organization, but that's really cool. So here's our now again, for source to image to function, it's got to assume have some assumptions about the repository. It's all going to be convention based. So you notice we had the package.json in my Node example. It's going to know how to use that. Python, it's going to know how to use requirements.txt and setup.py and things like that. Java, it's going to see a POM file and know, oh, I've got to run Maven against that. So these conventions aren't causing you to drastically rework your repository or do anything dumb like that. They're using what you should be doing in the first place, or what you traditionally be doing in the first place. So yeah, for web applications, it's going to run npm run, npx serve. So these are ways I can filter into the source to image process. But you'll notice I didn't say when you run this image, run whatever. It's going to have the defaults. Which it seems like for this modern web app, it's going to run npx serve. So assuming I've tied things in correctly there. If not, I can override it with an environment variable to the source to image. But yeah, this UI, so I kind of zipped through here, but we talked about this a bit last week. We have our administrator console and our developer console. And last week we got into the wonkiness of that naming, or the implications. What do I call this? Twitch. And we can see our application deployed here in our topology view. You'll notice it understands that they are both part of this label. The label is called app and the value is app, which is confusing to say out loud, but it's understanding how to read that app label and say, hey, these two guys are related. They're grouped in their own thing. Services, I don't think get tagged in the same fashion. It's probably just missing, template options. If I click in here, you can see that label that is identifying these two guys as related. So if in this project I had wanted to subdivide things further, if I had wanted to take, this is my concession kiosk, but I also have an administration kiosk, I could explicitly specify this name. So it's kiosk versus administration or something like that. The topology does some cool stuff in terms of grouping them and things like that, and then some options you can get to. Front end, that will bring us to the link itself. Anyway, if I go to add, this is your more traditional OpenShift 3 experience of, hey, what is it you're adding? Am I deploying a container directly from image, or am I pulling something from our existing catalog? What I had done was gone to Git, which is basically saying use our source to image functionality without using that exact term. But it's saying you have this builder image, which understands how to package and run applications of a particular language. Modern web app really just means anything NPM based. Yeah, I can fill out the information here. Very similar type of stuff where I give it the Git repo. It's going to create the URL. This is a tangent off of Odo. So we answered your question of what modern web app means. That is spectacularly vaguely named.
Yep.
But yeah, so
I mean, what does modern mean, anyways?
Exactly.
What does web app even mean these days? Yeah, so I don't know why those are showing up twice. Yeah, I don't know what I did.
S/modern/hipster.
Yeah, that's right. And 10x and latest. So
No.
these are all the components. We're continuing to flush these out, add in the runtimes and things like that. And that's Odo in a nutshell. That's the Odo way.
Nice.
As we hit 4 o'clock on the dot, so probably a good breaking point, and then we can come back to the code ready container stuff if that works for y'all.
I'm feeling good. Yeah, let's take 5.
Cool.
Grab more water or beverages of your choice. And we'll be back in about 5-ish minutes.
Cool.
Sound good?
Yeah, right
Sounds
when we get
good.
back, I'll take a look in case there's any Odo questions in chat and then make sure I answer those because my log had actually stopped following. But yeah, let's do that. So in 5 minutes, we'll be back.
Cool.